I'm going to welcome you again for our Jewels of Health session. Today we're going to talk about tomatillos, and we're really lucky David Kester came inside to join us in the kitchen because we don't have any tomatillos growing at the moment, but he's going to share some great information about tomatillos with us. So welcome David Kester, the horticulture agent in Boone County.
Thanks, Diane. I'm no stranger to the kitchen, not because I cook a lot, but because I sure like to eat a lot. And one of the things that we like to make at home is some authentic salsa. And we do use tomatillos for that. And tomatillos are not a tomato. They are in the same family. They're in the nightshade family, but they are not a tomato. A lot of people think, well, they're just small green tomatoes, and that's not the fact at all. They're completely different than a tomato. But they're grown usually in the South. They originated in Mexico and throughout South America, and just a really kind of an interesting plant. In Mexico, it's a perennial plant, and of course, when we grow it up here, it's strictly an annual because of our cold winters. They just won't survive. But there's a number of different varieties that we can grow. There's some, when we harvest tomatillos, if you're going to make salsa with them, they're usually used about that size. As they age, they get a little bit sweeter. But the Mexicans and the people from that region really like more of a bitter kind of a salsa. As we age them, they do get a little bit sweeter. But a lot of different ways to grow them, and there are not all that many different varieties, but there are some red ones and there are some purple ones. They get that color when they mature, and they're actually a little bit sweeter when they're that color. So that if you like something on the sweet side, you might want to look for those varieties. They can be grown in containers. I'll be honest with you, they are somewhat of a weedy plant. They're not hard to grow at all. They will, anything that you do for a tomato, planting your garden, your tomatillos will like those conditions just fine. They are actually, don't get many diseases or insect pests, and usually we grow them by seed. We put them either in a window or something like that, start the seed, and then we take them to the garden when it is past any danger of frost and the soil temperature is very warm. Then you want to put them into the garden, and I would say around here, I wouldn't even attempt to put my tomatillo transplants in the garden until it was at least May 20th or so. And at that point, you can put them in the garden, space them about the same distance that you would a tomato plant, and believe it or not, they also really benefit from being staked. As I said, it's kind of a weedy plant, and if you stake them, you'll get them up in the air, and they will actually produce more, and they'll ripen a little bit more uniformly if they're up off the ground. So I would definitely suggest doing that. And again, the fertility, not as critical as it is with a tomato. Water, definitely during dry periods, that really helps. And the yield of them is kind of surprising. I was looking it up, and because I wasn't really sure. I know that I always get more yield off of 1 or 2 plants than I can possibly use, but they say that the yield averages between 60 and 70 to 80 fruit per plant. So that's quite a few of them. And again, we want to do that in the warm months of the year. And as far as when they're ripe, when they're large like this is called the calyx, and it is not edible, but you actually remove this skin from it, and then you can use the green inner part. That's what you want to use. They actually say that all the rest of the plant is somewhat poisonous, being in the nightshade family, so you want to remove the husk. And they are also, another name for them is husk tomatoes. So you want to take that husk off of there, and you'll notice that it's real kind of sticky, and that just comes off with a little bit of water, and they'll be fine and ready to use. Just a really interesting plant. We don't grow them commercially, really, in the United States. I think there are some in Texas, but for the most part, they're in Guatemala and Mexico. I want to encourage you to try a few tomatilla plants, put them in your garden, and try out some wonderful recipes, some that Diane has here, and there's lots of other things that you can do with them. And just another kind of a neat thing, kind of a curiosity plant as well. I think you can bring people to your garden and ask them what kind of plant that is, and very few people are going to know. So you might want to try that out, and I hope you enjoy them.
So tomatillas contain some great anti-inflammatory compounds. They're high in vitamin C, vitamin K, manganese, and potassium. And a lot of times you'll see tomatillas used in Mexican cooking. In your flyer you will find a recipe for some tomatilla bars, which is kind of like a lemon bar, but it has tomatillas in it. Adds just a little bit of different character. We also have a tomatilla salad that we will share, and a lot of people use tomatillas when they make green salsa. If you go to the store, you can buy green salsa, also known as salsa verde, which means green salsa. There are different brands, different varieties, and different types of heat, so you'll see mild, medium, and hot. You can also buy green enchilada sauce, which has a base of tomatillas, and then you can also find canned tomatillas. Fresh tomatillas will be in the produce section. So whenever you're looking to pick out a tomatilla, you'll want one that's nice and firm, and it should have the husk still attached. And if you leave it in the husk, you can keep it in the refrigerator for about a week. If you take the husk off and store it just without the husk, it probably will last a little bit longer. Don't buy ones that have husks that are already starting to rot, or that you see spots on, or just normal signs of deterioration. You'll just want to leave those behind. And then you'll notice with our display here, there are all kinds of sizes. There are little tomatillas, a little bit larger tomatillas, and then there are larger tomatillas. So pick out the ones that you like. There's really no difference. Depends on what you're using it for. Today we're going to chop ours up, so it really doesn't matter. In the summertime, you can usually find these at the farmer's market, so you get them fresh, locally produced. When you buy tomatillas, do not wash them until you're ready to use them. And what you will do is you will peel off this outer husk, and you'll find that there's a very sticky residue on the actual tomatilla that you're going to use. So you'll peel it off, kind of pull it to the top, and you give it a little twist, and it usually comes right off. Then you're going to wash it under cool running water, and that sticky residue will come off. So we've already washed these, and we're going to use these in our recipe. And I'm going to demonstrate for you how to make the tomatilla bars. But before we get there, I'll show you. This is actually a tomatilla salad. It's made with fresh tomatillas, fresh tomatoes, has some basil and some red onion in it, and then it's got a red wine type vinaigrette on it. And I just served it alongside some freshly made bread here, but you could also eat it with chicken or steak, really any type of accompaniment. It's just a nice fresh summer salad. We're going to make the tomatilla bars, and to make our bars we will need an 8 by 8 inch square pan, and you can line it with parchment paper or aluminum foil if you want to. You don't have to. The advantage is it makes it easier for cleanup, and it also makes it easier to pull the bars out after you bake them. So a tip that I will show you for that is to take a piece of parchment paper, and I'm going to just press it slightly down into this pan. Then that just sort of marks my corners for me. Take a pair of scissors. I'm going to cut into almost into where my the corners are, and that way I will have room to fold this over, and they won't stick up and be in my way when I take and put my filling and everything into my pan. So it fits pretty well into my pan. I can clip these little corners off and throw those away. Just makes it nicer looking. Not that it matters. Nobody's going to see this anyway. Okay. So I'm going to fit this in my pan, and I'll be ready to go when I'm ready to get my crust going. So I'm just going to set this aside. We're going to make our crust, and we're going to do our crust. We're going to do the crust and the topping at the same time. And as we get ready to do that, we're also going to set aside some thickener for our filling, which is the tomatillas. So I need 1 cup of all-purpose flour. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons extra, and it says the word divided after it. So my 1 cup of flour goes in my bowl, and I put 2 tablespoons in another small container, and I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to use that in just a minute. This is going to help thicken my tomatillos when I get ready to cook those. I'm going to add 1/3 of a cup of granulated sugar. I have a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. And then I'm going to stir that just briefly to mix it up. Then I will cut in my room temperature butter. I don't want it melted. I don't want it freezing cold because it's very hard to cut in. It's almost like making pie dough. You can use a fork. You can use 2 knives. You can use a pastry cutter if you want to, if you have one. If you have none of those, your hands work just fine. Just make sure they're nice and clean. You don't want to use dirty hands for this. And I want to keep cutting this in until it's coarse crumbs. So this is looking pretty good. That works in pretty quickly. I'm just going to clean off my pastry cutter here. You could probably also put this in a food processor if you wanted to, if you have one. There's a lot of different ways to do this particular step. So my recipe now tells me to take 1/4 cup of this out of this container and put it with my 2 tablespoons of flour. I'm going to use that to thicken my tomatilla mixture. So I just set this aside and wait until I need it. Then I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of instant or quick oats is what they're called, quick oats, not the old-fashioned kind, but the quick oats. So I will go ahead and mix those in and continue cutting in that butter with the oats and the flour and the sugar. I'm going to put this into my prepared pan. So I am going to leave the liner in. Just going to make sure it fits in there. I'm going to use about 2/3 to 3/4 of this mixture into the pan. It's about 2 cups if you're measuring with a measuring cup. Or you can just sort of eyeball it. Spread it out to the corners. Then you can take the bottom side or the flat side of a measuring cup and press it into the pan. And you want to press it so there's a little bit of a lip around the whole thing because your filling needs to sort of stay within the crust. So just press it into the corners, press it all around, get it nice on the bottom. Try to make it so you don't have big thick crust on one side and thin on the other. Very simple, very easy. I'm going to put this in the oven and let it bake for at least 10, maybe 15 minutes until it's golden brown and set. And then I'll take it out and I'll put the topping on and we'll return it back to the oven. So I'm going to put this in a 375-degree oven for 10 to 15 minutes. So I have this left because I didn't use it. We're going to sprinkle this on the top of our filling once we make our tomatillo filling. So I will just set this aside till I'm ready for it. Now I need to get my tomatillas ready, and I can do this while my crust is in the oven. I'll have my tomatillas ready and we'll get the filling going. So I just need a saucepan. This one's a little bit big, but it's okay. A small one will work fine too. With a lid, we want to be able to cover it for a short period of time. And I need 3 cups of chopped, washed tomatillas, washed and chopped. And I'm going to chop them in about a 1/2-inch cube. And you don't have to be exact. You don't have to get out the measuring stick or anything. And I will tell you, I usually use a serrated knife. This is a little steak knife. If you have a larger like bread knife or serrated knife, they work really well. Just helps cut through that, cut through the skin of the tomatilla. So we've washed these. So I'm just going to cut these. One thing about these, you generally don't have to remove the little stem part where the stem was attached. It's usually rather soft and benign as compared to some of the tomatoes where you really have to take that core out. So you'll need probably about 1 pound of tomatillas. So when you go to the grocery, you can just weigh that out. You might want to buy just a little bit over 1 pound to make up for any that might be damaged, or that to make up for any of the husks that you take off. You really don't have to spend a lot of time doing this. It goes pretty quickly. So I just want 3 nice full cups. I'm putting them in this bowl for right now, but I could put them directly into the pan. So there's my 3rd cup. Let's set this aside. Get my dirty dishes out of the way. I'm going to put these in my pan. And to that, I'm going to add 1/4 cup of lemon juice. You can use bottled lemon juice. You could squeeze fresh lemon juice. It's up to you, whatever you have on hand. If I were using fresh lemons, I might use a little bit of the zest just to add a little extra lemon flavor. One thing about tomatillos is they sort of have a, I find they have a little bit of a lemon flavor to them. Some people will say they're a mixture between like a green plum or a green apple kind of mixture. Kind of flavor mixture. They have a little bit of texture to them, but they are a little bit tart. So I'm going to turn this on and bring it up to a nice simmer. So we have our tomatillos and lemon juice, and they've been simmering, and our tomatillos are nice and soft and they're breaking apart. I'm going to add my sugar, stir that in, and just a little bit of salt just to help counteract that sugar a little bit. Blend that together, stir that together. I'm not blending, I'm just stirring it around until that my sugar dissolves. And then I'm going to add the thickener that I set aside. So this was the 2 tablespoons of flour and the 1/4 cup of the crust before we added the oatmeal in. So I'm just going to add this in. I'm going to try to sprinkle it in so that I don't end up with really big lumps. The butter will melt, and that flour is going to help to thicken this mixture. So I just need to stir this up really well and work to get those lumps out, any lumps of flour. And I want it to boil and simmer for just a little bit. And remember, we're going to put this into the oven on our crust to bake completely. So just looking for a nice thick mixture and no big lumps of flour left in it. And while we were cooking this, while our tomatillos were cooking, our crust got done. So our crust is ready to go. And my tomatillo mixture is ready to go. Just going to pour my tomatillo mixture right onto my crust. And that's why we put that little lip around the edge, just to contain all of the tomatillo mixture. Just spread this out to the edges and over to the corners. There's my mixture. And then if you'll remember, we set aside some of the crust mixture so that we could sprinkle it on top. And that's what we're going to do now. So I just want to try to sprinkle it all the way around on the sides and on the edges, across the top, and just try to make an even distribution of our crust. We're going to turn our oven down. And then we're going to return this to the oven to bake for probably 30 to 35 to 40 minutes until it's nice and golden brown and nice and bubbly. We want our crust to be nice. Okay. So there we go. We're going to go back in the oven at 350 degrees for about 35 to 40 minutes. So our tomatillo bars are still baking in the oven, but I just want to remind you, you could eat tomatillos raw. You can have them cooked. You can put them in salsa to go over any kind of meat. It's used a lot in Mexican cooking. They're a good source of vitamin C, good source of vitamin K, and make salad, make salsa, make a bar. There's a recipe for soup. There's all kinds of uses for tomatillos. So give them a try. You might like them.